Here is the glyph for Admetos, and I call it the dark room. And one of the things I do, which, everybody knows photography is a Neptune ruled entity. I've been a photographer for a long time. And at one time I had my own black and white dark room. And this is long before digital photography. And I was self-taught on that too. Pulled out a book and learned how to do it. But anyway, when you take your film out of your camera, you put it into a bag, and then you are going to move, and the room is dark, except that you have a red light, and it's okay to have a red light in your dark room because it's not going to interfere with the pictures that you shot. And so you're going to be putting that film through 3 different washes, chemical washes. And by the end of the third, you're beginning to see this plain brown transparent film start to congeal and show different shapes are starting to come into view and sharpen, and it turns from this brown transparency to this black and white instead. And that's the idea of Admetos. Admetos is very deeply buried in the subconscious. There's 2 types of Admetos people. One, they look like the Taurus type, which, if you go back here wait, I want you to go forward. Thank you. The Admetos, when I first saw this, to me, it always reminds me of Taurus, because you do have the sign Taurus there, okay? You have the bull sign. And I always thought that it was, it was very Taurian. So, and there is some good Taurian aspects, like they have no necks, they have a very short neck. They're very strong. They're usually medium to large boned. They're never bird bones. They're not small boned at all. And they're chunky, and they are blocky, and they're strong, like I said before, very muscular for the males. And so then the other thing is that the other type, they may feel like they're caught between a rock and a hard place, or they're going to have an incarnation of where they feel like they're caught between a rock and a hard place. And that basically goes back to one of my favorite aspects, which is the inconjunct, which is 150-degree so-called minor aspect. In medical astrology, it is one of the most major important aspects you ever want to look at in a chart, either natally or progress-wise. And you want to look for the inconjunction, because that's where, if there's going to be medical issues, that's where they're going to start. There's also the feeling with the people, and they may not look Taurian, but they have this feeling inside of them that they're either caught between a rock and a hard place, or they feel like their back is up against the wall all the time. And then there's also what is this thing doing? Come back here. Sorry. Well, wrong way. Okay. They also feel like they're suffocating. And I said, from an astrological standpoint, Admetos is the inconjunct, or the 150-degree hard aspect. Literally, those 2 could be married. And these people who have a strong Admetos in their chart, or when there's a transit of Admetos over their natal planets, or their MC, or their ASC, or their IC or DSC, there's going to be big things happening. And for some of them, that's where they begin to feel like their back is up against the wall and there's no place to go to get away from it. An Admetos person, and by the way, I am an Admetos person. I can prove it to you, but I'll show it to you later, because it's really not that important to do a show and tell on that. It's simply that you have to know that I am an Admetos person in just about every way, shape, and form. There is a group of Admetos people that become what we call the wounded healer archetypes. And what that means is that they're taking on some life-threatening situation In my case, I survived 18 years of it in a very intense dysfunctional family. Or they may have, let's say, a disease that they have for a lifetime or part of their lifetime. And then they work through it and they heal themselves, either through other people, which is part of the healing, but also them making the internal choices to do or see something different. So all learning is experiential or kinesthetic with Admetos types. They are not book learners. The only way they learn is real life. That is their penultimate teacher and educator. They don't usually do too well in school either. It's just not the type of learning that they need in order to get to their skill sets. They're also kinesthetic learners, hands-on. They take it apart, they put it together, they touch it, they feel it, they smell it, and that is their teachers. Okay. So Admetos people, what you can say about them, and if you've got your chart, I know you're all Uranian astrologers, so you must know in your 360-degree chart where your Admetos is at and where it's located. The way you tell if you are an Admetos person is if you have in the 360 chart within 5 degrees of a known 9 or luminaries. Okay, say if you have Admetos conjunct your moon within 5 degrees between each other in that natal chart, that automatically makes you an Admetos person. But the tighter the degree, okay, I always like to use 1 to 2 degrees between a Uranian planet and a 360-degree dial of your natal chart with a planet. I like to see 1 or 2 degrees because that means it's really active on a very deep subconscious level on you. And I love working with people like that because they think they know some things, but they're afraid to get it out there. They're afraid to speak about it because they may not think that they have the learning or the education that they need. But you know what? They're pulling from all past lives that they need for this lifetime. And this is where the Uranian planets come in very, very importantly. I can guarantee you I have downloads like you would not believe of things that I know and I see, and I get precognitive dreams about them. And it's all Admetos born, literally. So you can take a look at it that way. Psychic ability for Admetos people is very strong. The worst problem with that is that they don't trust themselves enough to follow the intuition of what they know. They know what they know without knowing why they know it. And you just got to get over that and get used to it, because you'll have a synchronistic event, maybe, 10 minutes later or 2 days later, that's going to back you up and show that you were correct with your intuitive knowing. Okay, so Admetos types 2. Admetos people have a great depth of thinking and intuiting process. They're slow to answer. This is typical Taurus types of energy, okay? Taurus people aren't little jabberers. They sit there, they think about it a long time before they ever say anything. And so does Admetos. So there's that Taurian glyph energy in this mix. And the Admetos people are going to be a specialist in some career area, and they will eventually, and usually it's at an older age, usually around age 40, that they become, their peer group. They really know what they know. And also in Admetos is about looking at a strong Admetos. You're going to get a surgeon, because Admetos people have this laser-like focus. You have no idea, unless you've ever been put into a situation where you thought you were going to live or die, and all of your focus just goes like this. It's like a laser beam toward what's happening to you. But Admetos has this natural skill, and there are people in different types of careers that really need that type of laser-like focus. And they are, more than any other Uranian planet, they have an archetypal connection with archetypes to pull vast storehouses of knowledge out and verbalize it and teach it, podcast or write about it for everyone else's education. And again, it's going back to they know what they know without knowing why they know what they know. And once you trust that, you've got your wings to fly. Until then, you're a road runner running around on the ground and you haven't used your wings yet. So start believing more into yourself and what you know, and thinking about, how do you get it out there? How do you share it? How do you help people with it? How do you serve them? This is what's important to me. And you're going to find your higher types of Admetos people are like that. They're serving. They serve in organizations, donation organizations. They serve in global organizations that are trying to get wells dug in some foreign country so people have water to drink, or feeding the poor in these UN camps. You're going to find Admetos people all over the place serving humanity in some way, shape, or form. I'm a homeopath, so, and I'm not going to get into that. It is an alternative medicine that's used around the world. And I put down here, Admetos people are hard to draw out. If you're trying to take their case homeopathically, they do not yield out vital information at first. You might get an answer, but they give a vague answer. They are not going to give you a full-throated piece of information that you can work with. And literally, they have to trust you. And the trust doesn't come easy to an Admetos person. They will sit and watch you for a long, long time to see how you act and react with other people, including themselves. So that's just the way they're built this lifetime. And I think it's a good way to be, frankly. Of course, I'm an Admetos person, so of course I would agree with that. All right. Admetos people can become emotionally stagnant. And this is where they can have edema or water problems. The moon also rules edema and water, but the real player behind the scenes is Admetos, because Admetos is our subconscious. It has rulership over it completely. It is literally a storehouse of information and of skills from the 1,000 incarnations that you have had so far. What you need in a given incarnation will come out of your storehouse, which is Admetos, and it's going to be given to you. And, you know, for instance, I was struck by lightning at age 9. And after I got struck, I went into the house and told my parents about it. What happened was there was a big thunderstorm coming in Ontario, Oregon, in the heat of the summer. And I saw it, and the wind was starting to blow, and I was in my little dress and stuff, and I went running up on a dry manure pile. It was the highest thing around because it was flat as a board in Ontario, Oregon. Okay, it's part of the Great Basin Desert, and so I ran up on the manure pile, and I love thunder clouds and thunder beings, and my mom started teaching me about them when I was about 4 years old. And that they're the largest spirits in the 3D world. And they're the ones that create the storms, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, everything. And most people are afraid of them, but I loved them. And so I went running up there, and the wind was gusting like 30 or 40 miles an hour. I mean, that storm was really coming fast. And I went up there and I just threw my little arms up in the air. And all of a sudden, I felt all of the electricity coming down both of my arms and into my body and out my feet. And I went, oh. And so I thought, well, I better get off this hill. So I did. And I went inside and I told my parents about it. And as I was going inside, I heard this male voice inside my head saying, you are either going to be a famous artist or a famous writer, and it is your choice as to which you become. And, you know, and I'm looking around for the voice, okay, because at 9, you don't know a whole lot. And I couldn't find or see anybody. And so I thought it must be one of the thunder being spirits that's talking to me. So I thought, well, gee, this is important. I'd better go inside and tell my mom. So I did. And the first thing she did is she went to the broom closet, pulled out her Corona typewriter, took me into the kitchen, sat me down at the table, and put the Corona in front of me. She says, I'm going to teach you how to type. My mother, by the way, was a Scorpio with a moon in Leo and Sag rising. And she was way ahead of her time. She also had a Saturn conjunct Neptune in her chart. So she knew I was going to become a famous writer. And that's when it started. So at age 9, I learned how to type, which was back in 1940, 1946, probably 1954. So anyway, another thing is jobs that entail a lot of interface with people will stress them out. They work better alone. They're not loners. I don't like, I'm a wordsmith because I'm also an author. And a loner to me means somebody that's a hermit that doesn't like people and doesn't want to be bothered and wants to be left alone, which is fine. I have no problem with that. But Admetos people aren't like that. They just need, they work better on a one-to-one with other people or with animals or out in the environment, talking to trees and plants or whatever. And they are self-starters. It's like on the internal side of an Admetos person, they already know what they can do. I knew at age 9 that I was going to be a writer. Now, I never put famous in front of it. I just writing, and that's all I knew at that time. And so the Admetos types, I think this is the next one. Okay, yes. I might also say that, no, we've had that one before. Sorry about this. I'm learning how to do this time. So you guys are my training wheels. I appreciate your patience. Admetos types are very slow or late bloomers, and they don't normally start breaking into their own until around age 27, which is your Saros cycle of the moon, or 28 to 30, which is your Saturn cycle. That's when they really start knowing who they are, what they are. Their 20s are usually miserable. This is where we make all our mistakes. This is where we trip ourselves up. This is where we make bad decisions. This is how we learn. But Admetos has a really rough, rocky start in that particular way. They also have almost legendary powers of endurance. And you see these people, they're climbing mountains, or they are walking the Pacific Trail in the West from Canada down to Mexico, or they're on the Appalachia Trail, which goes almost to Canada and down the entire East Coast. Admetos people do things like that. They have almost an inexhaustible supply of energy. Their ability to concentrate is, to me, legendary. It's very deep and with a laser-like focus. Now, you need to know this. My father was a shaman, and at age 9, after I got hit by lightning, he says, it's time to train you. And I was the oldest of 4 children. And so, in his Native American way, it's always the oldest child who gets trained to do something, usually, unless there's some other thing that comes along to say differently than that. But he began training me at age 9 to become a shaman. And I worked and trained with him until age 18, until I left and went out into the real world. A lot of Admetos types have a very strong Admetos in their chart. And if they want to become a shaman, it's certain, and they need to be one this lifetime for whatever the reason, that's fine. If not, that thing isn't going to turn on and you don't have to worry about it. But very often you see the power behind the scenes is always an Admetos person. They don't like being pulled out and put into public. They don't like being, up in front of the stage. It's just not their thing. They understand on a deeper level, perhaps, that, if you aren't famous, then you can get a whole lot more done, because the fame is a distraction. It's not real. It's an ego feeder, if nothing else. And most Admetos types that I know, and of course there are some on the other end that aren't, but they're very humble people. They're very they have humility, and they really honor everybody else's abilities and skills and knowledge. And they are literally, you find them in libraries. You find a lot of librarians are Admetos people. They love the books. They love the education. They love learning. They're always educating themselves, but they have a lot of inner education that they brought with them too. And that's where I'm always interested, asking people, well, what are you doing with this? Somebody will say, oh, I really love doing this, and I've done this, this, and this. And I said, well, what are you doing with it? And they just kind of look at me and say, well, nothing. Why? And it's like, well, there's people out there who can utilize what you know. And I said, we're in a time where we're going from the Pisces to the Aquarian age, where there's a dissemination and a sharing of knowledge like never before. And that's Aquarian. It's an air sign. It's communication. It's, you know, being part of a village, and whatever your skill sets are, you use them for the good of all. And I said, that's why you should be doing something with it. So I've kicked a lot of butts in my lifetime with people that I meet like that. And Pluto people aren't far behind, because they also don't necessarily like being out front. Okay, I think we talked about this one already. Self-starters. Okay. Admetos people have a lot of patience and perseverance to see something through. Their word is their bond. They watch what a person does, not what they say. And with Admetos, one of their favorite sayings is, you know, do you walk your talk? In other words, you know, are you real, or are you putting on a mask and playing charades or trying to be something that you aren't? They're reliable. They're hard workers. They will work themselves into exhaustion, and they do not know when to stop. And they're like a dog with a big bone that they're not going to gnaw through in one day. And they will keep it that bone for 24, 48 hours without sleeping to get it. That is a very Admetos type of way of doing things. Not good. Now, there are people, we talked about this ruler, you know, one end is the dark and one is the light. Your dark-ended Admetos people can sink to levels of fraud, lying, and deception. And they make, of course, you know, if you're in counterintelligence, and they make great moles and undercover spies. They are chameleons by nature, and they know how to fit in and fade into the background and not be seen, but they get an awful lot done that way. Okay, this goes back to what I said before. This is one of my old negatives that I have still in 10 boxes. But this is, Admetos reveals what is in our unconscious and brings it to light. It is like film development. So if you can't get a handle on Admetos, just think about it in terms of a dark room, and this, you know, there's nothing on this film, but yet when you put it through those 3 chemical washes and baths and hang it up, and you can literally watch it congeal and become something you can recognize, that's Admetos. They're good for doing it for themselves, and they're also good for doing it for other people. Okay, I know that Jimmy's going to be giving you a handout that has this information on it, but I just want to reassure you that if this is something, if Admetos is of interest to you, the URL for the entire thing, you're getting it as a handout, but this is the URL for it on my Walking the Land website. All right, so the glyph for Admetos, this is another way to think about it if you're having issues with trying to pull it together and understand kind of its core. Just look, some people can look at a symbol and get so much feedback. It's almost like telepathy, and you get imprinted with it, and you know it then, because you are very resonant, and you've built up the ability to work with the energy of the symbol or symbols. And so if you can look at Admetos and you get a prang in your heart or somewhere in your body that you know it, then this is great, because this is just another way to understand this incredible planet. And I said it is the symbol of Mercury with the cross of matter. And when I see the cross of matter, it always means to me that you are able to manifest whatever it is you know, or sell, or whatever, on the 3rd dimensional level where we all live. In other words, these people that have a cross of matter in their symbol regardless of whether it's Uranian or if it's in our other astrological or in the asteroids. Everything has a glyph, but if that cross of matter is in there, that means that person can really ground something and manifest it here, actually physically build it, and they will come. That's how it goes. Also, Mercury symbolizes the cosmic antenna that we all possess. It's a question of whether we listen to our intuition, our gut hunches or not. People that don't trust their intuition, they don't listen to it. So they miss a lot of opportunities that could have helped them move forward in this incarnation. They'll have to do it some other time in another lifetime. But Admetos people are creative because we consider Admetos the womb of the woman, and we consider Admetos a feminine. I consider Admetos a feminine energy more than male. The male is certainly there, but the primary it's feminine, and it's about the mother. And so we'll get into that in a minute. As far as creativity goes, they're forward-looking. They are visionaries. If they're on this end, somewhere between half and this end of the ruler, they're forward-looking. The closer you get to the end of it, they're visionaries, and they're inventors, and they're world builders. These people can go global. But again, it's about them trusting themselves enough to start moving forward on it. Okay, at their most positive expression, they are world creators and influencers and visionaries for the future of our planet and all our relations. And that's somebody that's really at the high end of that ruler of the light. And they are absolutely working through their heart energy. Their mind is secondary, which is the way it ought to be. So you can get a lot more done with love than you can by thinking about it. When you become the love, it's a whole different world and relationship with everything else in the 3D world. Okay, so this is a little of a teaser, okay? Remember I told you that if you have a conjunction with one of the Uranian planets with one of your known 9, pay really strict attention to that. This is the 90-degree dial, and this is my chart. And the inner circle is the natal, and the outer circle is the solar arc progression, the average solar arc. And I circled the Jupiter Admetos because it is, what you want to do is look at which one is the closest. We're talking about a degree or a half a degree or a quarter of a degree. And in the progressions, which go counterclockwise, then I am looking at 6 months out or half a degree as the planet is coming up to a natal planet to really start, things are going to start happening on a lot of different levels. But just looking at the natal here, my closest one is Jupiter Admetos. And we all know that if we see a conjunction or within 2 degrees or 2 years in the 90-degree dial, then we've got, the tighter it is, the better it is. And so you may find maybe 3 or 4 different conjunctions between a Uranian planet and one of your natal planets, either in the 90-degree dial. It has to be really close, because Uranian astrologers work with very small increments. They're working with, a quarter of a degree or half a degree, and a quarter of a degree is 3 months, so half a degree is 6 months, so on and so forth. But in my chart, the closest one I have is the Jupiter, and we all know that a conjunction, although it looks like a conjunction in the 90-degree dial, it could be a sesquare, it could be a square, or it could be an opposition, or maybe a conjunction. I've got a lot to say about that, but I can't get into it today. But I just want you to look at your charts and look and see if there's a Uranian that's close to one of your known 9 in the luminary, and start looking at it maybe a little differently. Okay, so Admetos symbology undressed, the half moon above the circle indicates the feminine energy. And in the Jungian framework, it is about half of our energy that we work with, and integration of the other half, which is the masculine. So you have two different energies, male and female. But again, Admetos, because of the crescent moon that is above that glyph, that means that, first of all, with the moon in that position, it means that it is receptive to the higher frequencies and the higher vibrations and the higher knowledge that's sitting up there like a treasure chest. And that Admetos people have the absolute ability to check in or to plug into that. And again, it all comes down to their intuition. It all comes down through this knowing without knowing why you know what you know. Later on, it gets proven. Okay, so we also, with the moon as the crescent, we have issues with emotions. Women with a woman, or perhaps with your mother, or maybe an aunt or a grandmother, or it's somebody at work. There's also, depending upon the aspects, there could be domestic abuse or childhood abuse is possible. And also pregnancy issues. And I use Admetos and Hades by a secondary for looking at a woman who's coming to me and saying, you know, how is my labor going to be? Am I going to have a safe delivery? You know, is there anything that's going to go wrong? Well, the first one I look at is Admetos, because that is where 90% of the issues are at. But again, it's because that crescent moon is women, it is feminine. Let's see. Okay, circle is about the completion. All right, circle is very important because it's your magic motion machine. It constantly moves around. It doesn't need any outside source to keep moving. And it's about completion of something, and you just got to find out what that is. And on a Jungian perspective, it's about wholeness or integration of the male and female energies to become whole or in balance. And we're all out of balance. I'll tell you that straight up. And we spend our lifetime trying to manage to get some more balance, and it's harmony within ourselves. So the more that we can become whole, the more harmony we have, the more we're going to believe in ourselves and believe in our mission, or believe in whatever we're being shown that we need to get out into the 3D, because Admetos people can ground it. Okay, so the cross of matter within a circle and outside of it is about grounding your energies. And I've said most of that before. I said the cross is also about the crosses we carry. And I will tell you this, I have never, ever yet met an Admetos person where it was the most prominent thing in their chart. And I'm talking about the 90-degree dial more than I am 360 here. That they've had a hard scrabble, rough beginning in their life. They could have come in very poor, parents couldn't make money, or whatever. It reminds me of the Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. Okay, when we had the Depression, and so many people left the Midwest because the soil was dead, and they all moved out to the West Coast. My grandmother and grandfather were one of them. He was a coal miner in Ohio, and he left and went west. And that was a good thing because he started his own business, and he was a master carpenter, and he owned his own business to create beautiful kitchen cabinets for people who had a lot of money. So, yeah, he worked hard, but he did beautiful work. But that is a very Admetos type of trajectory, if you will. And all right, so Admetos symbology. Here's the light. Here's people who are on the light end. And again, if you take this ruler, start at the halfway point and then go that way. This is the light, okay? And this is where you find these people that I want to talk about. And I said, depending upon the aspects, Admetos is a treasure chest for information and of information and understanding what we've gleaned from hundreds, if not thousands of lifetimes. And it's a holder to the keys of the wisdom and the skills you've learned over time. You will always be bringing back some of your skill sets into every incarnation that you have, whatever you need for that specific one. You don't get all of them. It's just the ones you need. And I said, often you are a master craftsman, either in a physical sense or on a mental or spiritual plane. And I said, you are the peer group in some way. You are a leader who leads from behind or quietly behind the throne of power and is the one who gets things grounded, manifested, and working and done. So Admetos people are real workhorses in that sense. And they're fine with it. They don't want to be well known. They don't need to be famous because they understand in a hierarchy, spiritually speaking, being humble and having humility and treating everyone as an equal is where they're at, and respecting them as equals. So your creativity cannot be matched, not even by Mercury or Jupiter. And I said, often you are in a creative job of your own, or you own your own company. You see a lot of people who are Admetos people. They start their own businesses, small business, which is smart. And I said, you may be a sculptor like clay, metal, wood, etc., a writer of books, articles, blogs. You may be a designer of any and everything. And anything you do with your hands is enjoyable to you. That can mean knitting, crocheting, embroidery, sign painting, sketching, auto mechanic, painter of houses. You get the idea. I love making quilts with my hands. That's one of my little creative things. Okay, and also they're very good at psychology and psychiatry. If you're interested in going that particular way, and Admetos people see through you. I guarantee you they got X-ray vision when they're at this middle to this end of the ruler. And they can see your foibles. They see our shadow. If you get into Jungian psychology, what our issues and wounds are, they understand how we tick. And I said, but Admetos has to go through her or his own wounding gauntlet and heal from them before she or he can become a wonderful therapist who can truly support someone working on their own issues and wounds. And they can become a wonderful reflector of our wounds and give us a roadmap on how to heal from them. I was very lucky at one point in my life where I was in psychotherapy with a psychologist. Her name was Elizabeth, up at the Cleveland Rape Center in Ohio. And I had been gang raped and drugged at 24. And I woke up twice during it and I couldn't move. I couldn't speak, nothing. The drug they gave me just did me in, but I remembered it. And I pushed it, and, typical Admetos, I just stuffed it away. I stored it. I dug a hole so deep to put it in there. I didn't ever want to see it come up. Well, when I was probably about, say, 35, it all came up and I knew exactly what it was. And I thought, I got to get help because I feel like I'm going to explode. And I went up there. It was an 1.5-hour trip one way from where we lived in Ohio. And everything was coming up so fast in me. I had to go see her twice a week. I mean, who in the right mind goes to a therapist twice a week, right? Well, I did, because I felt like I was going to die if I didn't get whatever was pushing up through me out. And it's such an Admetos type of reaction. You vomit it out. And I was vomiting out the words and stuff. And so I went to her the first year twice a week religiously. And every time I did, I came back just feeling like somebody had beat the living hell out of me. And but I worked through it, and then I would masticate it, and I would look at it, and then I would dissolve it, and then I was ready for the next little piece that came up. So that first year, there was twice a week. And then after that, for the second and third year, the second year it was once a week, and then the third year is about once every 3 weeks. And she really helped me understand what it did to me and how to work with it and how to change the tape that we get from trauma and to turn it into something that was positive and helpful to me. So I'm sure she was an Admetos person. I never got her, she wouldn't tell me her that typical therapist. I'm sure she had an Admetos because she had a a flashlight on me like you couldn't believe. And I've been forever grateful ever since. So let's go to the medical rulership of Admetos. Let's see. What I gotta look at the time. Okay. Medically, Admetos rules over stoppages, like blood clots, phlebitis, soft tissue injury, and emotionally, they're all clogged up and stagnant because they tend to swallow their emotions. And I just told you the story on that one. They choke on them literally or figuratively. And this choking is a real key in either an Admetos transit or progression, or if you have it natally. Choking and gagging and vomiting and suffocation are ruled by Admetos. And from a symbolic standpoint, when you vomit something up, you're actually getting the darkness of that energy out of you physically. That's what that means. When you choke on something, remember, Taurus rules the neck, okay? And this is where we choke, is usually in the neck. And if you are choking, or you have a session with choking at any time, when it's done and over with, and hopefully you're okay afterwards, it's something that was either said to you, it was something that was brought up from your past for you to look at, and you didn't, and you went and squashed it and suppressed it again. You really need to look at that. Or that somebody said something to you and you took it to task and you believed it, and you shouldn't have. Okay? Because everybody has their opinions, but nobody is living in your skin. And because of that, they can say all they want, but you have to know who you are and how it feels to you and how you're going to deal with it. So I said that the choking, the suffocation also has to do with asthma, okay? Because what happens is the bronchial tubes constrict, they close up, and they don't allow enough oxygen into the lungs, any fresh oxygen, okay? And also the oxygen that's depleted is wanting to come out, and it can't come out, so you're not feeling too good. But that is Admetos. And the best way to get to an asthmatic, as far as I'm concerned, and I've worked with a lot of asthmatics in my life as clients, is to find out, okay, where's the trauma? What happened? Where, who, what, where, when, why, and how? And once we get to that, it's amazing how quickly the asthma clears up, because the person is giving it voice. When you give something voice, that is an energy in itself. And believe me, you can change people's lives with your voice. But if you've got something that you're ashamed of, or you feel guilty, or you think that, God, I did a really stupid thing and this is on me, and I'm a bad person, anything like that, Admetos people tend to take it to task and take it to heart, unfortunately, and they swallow it. But believe me, it comes back up. So you can get a lot of throat issues with an Admetos person, but it's because of the past trauma. And that's where you've got to go with this person. If you don't think you can do it, then gently suggest, well, maybe you'd like to talk to your pastor or your priest, or somebody you trust, because most people can't afford therapists. They're just way too much money. Okay. They may be really good at what they do, and there's bad ones too, but that's beside the point on this talk. The important thing is to get this person to somebody that they trust, that they can start looking at the past. What has that? It could have happened 48 hours or 24 hours, earlier. Whatever it is, they've got to start talking about it. As soon as they start talking about it, it's relieving and getting rid of that dark energy, that dark vibration that you're holding on to. That's the block. That's what we choke on. And you can choke to death. And I've seen Admetos people do that. So that's a biggie with Admetos. And let's see, hold on. There. Okay. I just did that one. Where are we at? Okay. Sludge. Okay, this is not a medical term, but it's a writer term of mine. It's sludge in the body in Admetos. I said, sludge is not a medical word, but everyone knows what it means. It means something is slowed down or semi-blocked. So whatever it is, it cannot run fully and freely. And I said it could be blood, it could be saliva, it could be the air we breathe, asthmatics, emphysema. It could be a stone in the gallbladder or the kidney. this is sludge. Also, it's claudication of the capillaries, where, you know, when you get older, if your ankles are looking bluish, that means the capillaries of the perfusion, which I'm not going to get medically into that, but basically the blood is slowed down and it's not moving like it should. And if it's not moving like it should, that's not a good thing either. And but it's all an Admetos thing. So you can look at a transit of Admetos to your, your natal chart or your progressions, and it'll be there possibly if you have been able to get out most of what you choked down and sat on, then you're not going to get these things medically. Okay, we only get them when we're not doing something that's in harmony or what's good for ourselves as a human being. So back to this, think of plaque or cholesterol buildup in an artery. It slows the energy and the speed of the blood down. Okay, and it can also knock off a piece of plaque, and there goes a stroke. And it partially blocks it or slows it down and eventually stagnates it. To me, that is a type of sludge. That's why I don't talk to my medical clients in medicalese. I talk to them in words that they can understand in their normal vocabulary, hopefully. So also, as I said, asthma is an Admetos rule disease. And if you have a bad asthma attack, you can suffocate and die. And that is an Admetos death. Okay, Admetos and swamps. And I said, if you've ever encountered a swamp, you know that there's a putrid smell to it. Usually it's sulfur-like, but it can just smell like rotting flesh or something like that. There's no water movement. Everything is slowly rotting in place. And I said, everything in a swamp is hidden. And there is stagnation, and it turns to sludge or mush over time. It dies. And I said, there's no life energy in a swamp, because if you had moving water coming in one end and a stream going out the other end, there's movement of water. You're not going to have a swamp. So when you think of Admetos, you think of swamps, and everything becomes a standstill. Nothing can grow. It can only die a slow death. And I have seen, going back to our ruler like this, from about the middle toward that end, the dark end, okay? These are the people who are suffering like this. They don't believe in themselves. They don't trust their intuition. They don't trust their own inner knowing. As crazy as it may sound, they don't trust it. And they're not growing. They hide. And you see a lot of beggars, and you see people, the ones that I want to talk about are the hobos back in the 1940s and 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, because I grew up in the 1950s, and we lived out in the middle of an island in the Snake River outside of Ontario, Oregon. And we took care of a huge herd of sheep that lived there. There was a house there. We got our rent free because we took care of the herd of sheep. And the only way on and off that island, and this island was in the middle of the Snake River, and the only way off the island was a railroad trestle across the Snake to the other side, which was Ontario, Oregon. And it was about 50 feet above the water. And we used to get all these trains that came through, okay, would always slow down, really slow down a lot. And the hobos would hop off, okay, and they would come to my parents' house, and they would knock, and they would ask, could you feed us? And my mom always threw open the door and said, come in. And sometimes it was one or two hobos, sometimes it was 5 or 6. And I was only 5 years old at that time when we came there. And so, I was this little nosy Gemini curiosity kid, and I'm always around them, and I'm looking at them and listening to them. And they were unkempt, they were dirty, they had beards, they hadn't shaved, their hair was unkempt and it was long, and their clothing was rags, and it was thin, and it was just, I felt so sorry for him. My mom did too. She had that Neptune Saturn, okay? And boy, she did a lot of good for a lot of people. And I would help her. I was only 5 years old, but I could carry a soup bowl and give it to each one of them as they sat down at our trestle table. And she'd bring over a big 12-quart stock pot of vegetables and venison, because there's a lot of deer on the island, and my father would shoot a deer, a buck usually, and what didn't matter whether it was in or out season. We were so poor that was our only meat source, and so we had venison. I had venison growing up, and but there was always huge chunks of venison in the stew, and my mom always kept fresh biscuits in the warmer of our ruby stove. We had no electricity, absolutely none. We had, outhouses. There was no toilet inside. There was no electricity whatsoever. And so she would feed all of them and give them these warm biscuits. And you cannot imagine what that meant to them. And I get tears in my eyes thinking about it. Was the compassion that my mother had, and that's where I learned as a 5-year-old about compassion and helping people as best you could. They couldn't give them any money, but she would allow them to sleep in the barn. She had extra blankets that they could have, and in the stalls, and that's how it went down. So that's the Admetos on the dark side, is just going through this type of thing. Okay, Admetos symbolic suffocation. I wanted to get more into the psychology of the suffocation rather than the physical, which is your asthma or your emphysema. Suffocation is the feeling of anxiety, panic attacks, and it means, you may be in a bad marriage, a stultifying, meaningless job, physically, mentally, or emotionally, or spiritually suffocated by a family, by your work. You hate what you do, but you got to have the money. So, there's this push-pull, or other circumstances. It's like drowning. The unconsciousness where one drowns in their own fluids and suffocates is asthma. Coma victims, by the way, are found big time with Admetos. But the suffocation feeling, if you got that means something's not right in your world, and you got to figure it out. What is it? What can you do to change it? What are the choices that you have? And usually these happen on an Admetos transit or an Admetos progression in your chart. Another interesting thing about Admetos is autism. And you notice both of them start with an A, okay? Autism occurs frequently in Admetos people. They have a deep inner life, but no or very little outlet in the 3D world. And also, many times these people are what we call high functioning. Again, it's focus, right? I told you before, Admetos is about that laser-like focus. What do autistic people do? Same thing. This is why you understand Admetos on many different levels now than perhaps you had before. So these high functioning people also are, many of them are geniuses, and a genius to me is somebody, if you've got a orange that you've sliced into 100 different little slices, the genius has one of those slices and they are a master of it. They are your peer group with it because they know it inside and out, and their minds can run like a computer, quite literally. But that, again, is Admetos. They have this rich inner world, but they don't know how to get out and function socially in the world that we live in. And there are a lot of Admetos people who are borderline autistic, who are the high functioning type, that never get diagnosed, but they are, people see them as hermits or as loners, or they don't make friends easily, that type of thing. And yet they are a master of some skill. So again, Admetos can play on many different levels depending upon the person's incarnation. Okay, Admetos people are cold by nature. That's why you see so many of them going and living in the desert after they leave their 20-year job. They prefer a warm climate, and rain can be very depressing to them. It just depends. For others, it's okay, but rain depresses a lot of them. They're chilly by nature. They're always wearing a hat. This is a tip off to to you Uranian astrologers. You see someone wearing a hat when they don't really need to, but they always wear a hat. That's a strong Admetos personality. There's going to be a strong Admetos in their chart, I guarantee you. Okay, so Admetos emotions. Just very briefly here, this certainly doesn't touch everything, but hopefully I've painted you a pretty good picture of them so far. They're inward, they're shy, they're introverted. They're always introverts. They're not extroverts. They can't stand being around extroverts for too long, or it absolutely drains them dry. And some will say that they're cold or chilly, and because of their aloofness or them not wanting, or their shyness, people misunderstand them and they think that they're just being snobbish, or I'm better than you, and that has nothing to do with it. So they are an introspective person. They are really good listeners, and there's nobody better to talk to than someone like an Admetos person, because they're not only listening to you, what's coming out your mouth, they're feeling you. And this is that deep subconscious Pandora's box, this treasure chest that Admetos people have in their subconscious. They know a lot more than they realize, but they can feel it, they can sense it very strongly. Also, they're secretive, and sometimes it's because they're afraid others will take advantage of their vulnerability. They are closed mouth. They listen more than they speak. And I realize I'm an Admetos person, but I'm a Gemini, so that kind of gets, it's like a seesaw sort of in the center. They hold many, many secrets. They will never give up. And what is said to them stays with them forever. And they are carriers of serious skeletons in their closet. You want to know who has the real skeletons in their closet besides Saturn and Pluto? It's Admetos, which is number 1, and Hades is number 2. They've got really, really rough time. Okay, they're also blunt. They're tactless. They just tell you the truth. They just shoot from the hip. They don't sugarcoat anything. and they don't say much. It's like, yes, no, okay, that's it. There's no sentence. They like being alone, but they like it. But it's not that they are anti-human. They just need the quiet, because it's an energy reserve coming in to restock the subconscious. They don't realize and understand that, but I do. They also have, they don't want anything to do with crowds, which is why I like webinars. It's, I'm here alone. That feels good. That's an Admetos looking at the world, okay? There may be a lot of you out there, but, I'm really happy here because I'm by myself. Okay, so Admetos also is dry and stiff. They are what we call thirstless. They do not drink enough water. They don't drink enough fluids in the day. Look at this symbolically. What is water? Water is symbolic of our emotions. And since Admetos decides to bury them where the light's never going to shine, then they're not water drinkers either, because to drink water means to bring up the emotions. And you know what? Intuitively, they know that, even if it's on an unconscious level. So you're always trying to get them to drink more water. Good luck. So they also like deserts. They like low humidity and very little rain because of that. Now, as far as stiffness goes, I'm talking about is in the joints, the muscles are stiffening up with age or injury. And in public, they may also appear stiff and unable to do the required social speak. Some of them are very uncomfortable out in public or with strangers. They certainly will open up a lot more with friends. They are most the people that they trust, they will open up to more than any other group of human beings. And they will open up entirely to any animal that they love, or if they love a tree or they love the forest, they're wide open and they're available. And there is an exchange of energy between that environment or that animal in you 100%. Okay, so Admetos, restriction and constriction. Restriction of the circulation, often in your childhood, they have been severely restricted by parents or environment. And this is where we get into dysfunctional childhoods. And Admetos people, I have never seen an Admetos person ever have a good childhood. I really haven't. I'm sure they're out there, but I don't meet them. They learn to exist on very little emotional nurturing and sustenance, excuse me. That is why they must learn to show their emotions and not be afraid to reach out to be held. Some Admetos people actually hate to be hugged or embraced. And this goes back to people who, you know, don't want or need that, or they don't think they do. But in this case, it's because of the sterile childhood that they were raised in, and they weren't getting the nurturing, they weren't getting the hugging, the kisses, the playfulness, or the love being traded between a parent and a child. This is where they don't want to be touched. They don't want to be hugged. They don't know what it means. And that's really sad to say. Others seek out nurturing and mothering spouses, okay? To tip this a little differently, an Admetos person may marry somebody who is just a direct opposite of them, because that person is giving them what they didn't get in childhood, and they're making up for lost time. And I said, children with a strong Admetos who are forced into early daycare and no parenting throughout, because both parents work, are gravely wounded in the course. These are called your latchkey children. And I said, these children are starved for the milk of life, the nurturing of a mother, and they get neither. And I said, and like animals who are motherless, they curl up and retract inward for the rest of their lives. And then they become known as the strong silent type. And that's an Admetos person. That's another tip off. Okay, so Admetos, the dark mother. Remember the crescent, okay, in the glyph of Admetos is the moon. I said the abusive parent may be the mother, not the father. I said the way she was raised is the way you will be raised. The way your mother was raised, you'll be raised. A low type of Admetos who is not self-aware will carry on the abuse from mother to child, and the miasm, which is the transference of a disease that runs through generationally through a family. A good example of that is someone who was an alcoholic 3 generations ago. Every generation after that, somebody in it is an alcoholic, and you carry on that miasm, that darkness. And the miasm of domestic abuse carries on through the next generation as well. You get into a lot of situations if that person is an Admetos person. These things can happen to them. Some do not get along with their mother for many reasons. They may become a runaway to escape it. And very often these types of mothers, if you're an Admetos person, and I didn't have a mother like this, thank God, but if you are an Admetos personality and you have a mother that you do not get along with, and the mother is projecting on you, the child, okay, the girl child, then that's when the girl child will run away to escape. And of course, most of them get in even more dire straits when they do that. Also, the smother mother, remember the helicopter and smother mother definitions? These are parents that are Admetos ruled. They suffocate their children, denying them the ability to successfully cope in this world. And it's called stunted growth. And that's why I say with most Admetos people, they don't really get their act together until they are 28 to 30 years old. And then they're ready to start moving to become that world builder, even though they may not be thinking of it in those terms at that time. Okay, so let's go to shock. Lack of perfusion is a medical word that means the flow of blood or lymph through the body and being able to deliver and move it through the capillary beds of the tissue is what perfusion is. And it's how much oxygen gets into the membranes or tissues. And a third type, which is isolated limb perfusion. For instance, like Raynaud's disease is a disease usually of the hands. The hands get very cold. They can even be blue appearing. And it's especially bad with Raynaud's when they're cigarette smokers, because when you smoke a cigarette, your capillaries automatically constrict. That's a fact. And so people who have Raynaud's, it's a limb lack of perfusion into the fingers and stuff, and they become very cold, blue, and it may take an hour, and they can hurt a lot. There can be a lot of pain with them. So that's what that is. And it's important that the body be able to perfuse, because not only is it bringing you oxygen, it's bringing you the nutrition to your tissues and cells, but it's also providing the other end of it, which is typical of Admetos, is you're cleaning out the cellular waste, the urine, the poop, the sweating, this type of thing. That's getting rid of toxins that human body doesn't need. And perfusion does all of these things. You can start looking at an Admetos person if you can't see them coming. If they smile or if they talk, look at their gums. The gums are pale, they're not pink. Also, another way to tell, and this is a medical commonality, okay, but it's very specific to Admetos types. When you press down your finger on your thumb and you really press it down, and then you let it up, see how long it takes the red blood to come back on that white spot that you went, and you're pushing the blood literally out of the capillaries there, and it should perfuse. If your perfusion is good, it comes back within 1.5 seconds. If it takes longer than that, then you have a perfusion issue. Okay, shutdown and shock. Many Admetos people suffer a great trauma or two in their lives, guaranteed one or two, and they wreck their life quite literally, and it just turns them around. And so they're dealing with that trauma, and it runs, and believe me, trauma runs through your entire life on every level of yourself, and to every auric field you've got and every chakra. So it devastates them, and that's true, it does. Now, shock and shutdown is different for different people. And Admetos can take a lot of shock before they get brutalized by it. And as a matter of fact, they're like a tank. And remember, Taurus, that Taurus symbol, Taurus can take a beating and just keep on moving. You'd have to blow out their legs from under them to get them to stop moving forward. Literally, they're going to finish what they start, and that is another Admetos maxim. I will finish what I start. I will get from here to there, whatever that means. So this trauma is on every level of them, and the person, and the Admetos person, I've said before, they wall it off. They suppress it, they bury it for decades. And then finally, at some point, it's going to explode outwardly into their consciousness to deal with, which I've already told you about mine, because it's a good visual reminder of how Admetos handles things. I didn't say we did it right the first time. Okay, so circulation in Admetos is poor circulation of the blood, or labored breathing, or lack of oxygenation. If your circulation is bad, it's because of your heart. Your heart is failing. Congestive heart failure is probably the #1 death of all cardiovascular diseases that we have today. The heart gets tired, it just quits beating. And when it does that you're not getting enough oxygen into your body to feed the organs and to perfuse. So basically, I have Raynaud's disease here, so we've already talked about that. Okay, so healing tools. I didn't want to just give you all of the bad things that can happen medically to an Admetos person, but here's the good ones. You're going to find Admetos people are in certain vocations or hobbies. One of them is gardening. And again, this is a very Taurian type of area, where Taurus is the same way. My grandfather was a Taurus. He always had a flower garden with the most beautiful roses and carnations you've ever seen. But gardening, anything having to do with the earth, whether you have a little pot that you've put, a daisy in and you're going to grow it, or you got, you want some peppermint. So you buy a pot and you put some soil in it and you grow the peppermint on your porch. Or if you've got a garden, whether it's a little plot or a big one, doesn't matter. Planting helps them, flowers help them, growing green things helps them. Because it's like with an Admetos person who hasn't dealt with their stuff, they feel like they're dying. And the opposite on a unconscious positive level is to go plant something, to see something growing, to see it be beautiful, to see it bloom. And they can also turn that around and help people the same way. You can help a child that has certain afflictions, or they need help. You can help them. They're very good at helping others, even though they're not necessarily helping themselves. They love walks in nature. I can't tell you, it's so important and vital that a Admetos person get out into either walking in the park, walking around your block, or, if you have the ability to go walk on a trail someplace, go do it, because that energy exchange that happens between you trust nature. People don't distrust nature, but nature is one of our biggest healing boxes we've got. Everybody needs to go out there, but Admetos people really need it. And they literally can feel as they walk into a park or walking into, a trail in the forest, they can literally resorb that healing energy that's automatically there, that's given by the plants, the trees, and nature that grows there, because they're trying to heal us, because we all need it so badly and they know it. Also taking time out to work with living plants, trees, shrubs, or flowers. You will find Admetos people, okay, job-wise in agriculture, biology, botany. They may own a flower shop, okay? They're good at flower arrangement. They may work at a nursery, they may own one, or they may own a greenhouse, or just have a little small greenhouse where they can go out there and they can put her with their plants and talk to their plants. They do talk to their plants. Plants talk back too. Anything creative that they can plant, like a seed, and this is a really important symbol for Admetos. Anything they can plant like a seed and watch it grow, literally or figuratively speaking, helps them psychologically and emotionally more than you could ever understand the enormity of it to helping them to heal themselves. Now, I've always said that with Admetos, it is the symbol of the seed that's been buried into the ground and the soil patted above it. And it's just waiting there to peek up and to start living in this 3D world. And that is Admetos, quite literally. But it's interesting. A lot of Admetos people are seed carriers. They gather seeds, and they take care of them. They have little drawers for them and little names on them. It's like that they're their children in a sense. They love to work with clay and pottery. They like to work with their hands. It could be finger painting, tempera paint, paper mache, making masks, carving wood, stone or metal, and some of the others I put down. There's photography, painting, dancing, music. All those things are very positive and helpful in healing to the Admetos person. Okay, so continued. Anything that will bring out their very deeply hidden emotions for positive expression or release the negative ones is desired. Those tools are psychotherapy, which I said is it's a lot of money and most of us can't afford it. It's often needed to help the Admetos person to put their abusive childhood into proper context so that they can discharge the toxic emotions and vomit them out, talk them out, okay, and work to heal their inner wounds and move on, and then be all that you can be. Also, another positive expression healing tool is going on a retreat. Now, and I need to be clear about this. You go on a retreat either by yourself or with people that the Admetos people trust. They are not going to go into a big retreat where they don't know anybody, because that's just going to shut them down. So, retreat means probably by themselves somewhere, where they go take a vacation, they go to Hawaii, they stay on the beach for a week, and it heals them. And by being alone, or if they're with somebody who they trust, they can listen to their own internal voice in order to know how to live their life as fully as possible, or talk it out with that friend that they trust. And Admetos doesn't have a lot of friends. They have one or two, maybe three people, that's it. But the trust bridge between them is stronger than death. They've all gone around together in incarnations. They all recognize each other. It's hilarious. Psychedelic assistance therapy. Now, this is something that is very interesting, and because I'm a medical astrologer, I'm very interested in it, is psychedelic assisted therapy with medical supervision might involve MDMA, psilocybin, which is a hallucinogenic mushroom, LSD, or others with good outcome and success for the Admetos person. This, they're finding so many doors that are open to people who take a psychedelic assisted therapy. And, there's a lot of them around. A lot of the major hospitals are doing this. And sometimes you can get in, if you feel so moved, to be in their research and see the benefits of it. Our plants can heal us. And it's more than what we recognize, but now they're beginning to understand that hallucinogenic plants are actually our savior, given that it's done in the correct way. It's not about an addiction to taking hallucinogenic anything to escape this world. These types of assisted therapy are just doing incredibly magical, miraculous work with people who have cancer, who have deep depression, and things like that. So that's, but that's an Admetos tool that should be used for them if they're open to it. Okay, going on a vision quest. My father was Native American, so, going on a vision quest, it's a Native American way to stay earth-centered. All indigenous people have a vision quest, although they may not call it that, but it's basically going out alone to be by yourself and to be in nature, and letting nature and letting the spirits come and talk to you and give you a dream, or give you something that goes on outside of you in 3D world that is a message for you. And that helps. Sweat lodge ceremony is incredible. I've been a sweat lodge a teacher for a long, long time. I don't do it anymore, but I have seen so many people, and they all end up being Hades and Admetos type people, or Saturn people, or Pluto people, that are in the lodge with me. And in that darkness, with the water on the hot rocks that are glowing bright red, and that steam is rising in the darkness, you are in the womb of rebirthing. Quite literally, you are. That is the symbol of what a sweat lodge is. It is the womb. It is being reborn. And I've taken hundreds of people through sweat lodges over the years, and it's so gratifying to me to see that the person that walked in actually crawled in, because you can't stand up and walk into a lodge. You get down on your hands and knees, because it reminds you to be humble with all our relations, that you're the same. You're not bigger than, you're not more important than, you crawl through that hole too. But when they crawl out of that hole, they're not the same person. They have every one of them had some major important realization. Some hear it, some have a vision. Some get clairvoyant and see a spirit come in and it's talking to them. They're never the same, and they're always better for it. So that's the beauty, especially with Admetos and Hades people. Sweat lodge is great, and if you have somebody who does that type of work in your area, you might check it out if it appeals to you. being alone and in a quiet, low stress, Mother Nature sort of place is always healing to the Admetos person. And also, I always encourage Admetos people. I always ask them, do you have one room in the house that's yours? And if it's a woman, she goes, no. And the man says, yes, my garage or my tool shed. But a woman never has her own room. That is her womb. That's what that room is. Room and womb, one and the same. Admetos women really need that magical room that they will decorate and paint and put whatever they want in it, that is symbolic of them, is the color of them, is the music that is them, whatever it is, they need that womb room. Also, you can tell an Admetos person if you go into their, if they allow you into their house. A lot of them won't unless you're a good friend. Even family doesn't, if you're not getting along with them, they're not welcome into the house either. But if you can get inside an Admetos person's house, you're going to find living plants all over the place. I mean, the more the merrier, because plants, they intuitively know, heal them. And they do. Like, for instance, I don't know if you can see this or not, kind of up there. You see that great big green bush behind me? Okay. That is a corn plant from Maui in the Hawaiian Islands. And what it was a little packet of 3 little cut logs that were about 1.5 inches long in a little plastic bag. And I bought them, and they were corn plants. So when I came home, I planted them, and I've had this corn plant for 30 years, and I love it. And I love talking with them. There's 3 of them there. Okay. And I wouldn't know what to do without them. Every time we've moved, they've moved with us. And these things are about 12 to 15 feet tall. So, it required a lot of figuring out so that they could come to our next house. It's typical Admetos. Okay. So again, healing tools, we're going to keep doing this. One is writing. They're full of ideas. They encourage them to take a class of creative writing. That one thing can help them so much, because when you write creatively, you're always looking back on your own past, and anything you write about has something to do with something that happened to you, an experience, or you saw it happen to somebody else and you were there when it happened. And it is a psychological perspective, is a way to give voice to their pain and wounding. They don't consciously understand that. I was in adult education at Kent State University for 5 years, and also at Akron University for 5 years. And I taught creative writing and manuscript evaluation and how to write. And my classes were always full. We were allowed 30 people, and I had 30 people. And it was such a joy to me to watch all these little Admetos people, or maybe Hades people. They were the other group, or Saturn or Pluto, all come in. And they had to come in every week with 10 new pages of something that was written by them. And if they didn't produce 10 new pages, I turned to them away and said, you're gone. You're not taking this seriously. You're not taking yourself seriously. You're not honoring yourself and what you bring into this class. And so they would inevitably, week after next, show up with 20 new pages. I never lost students. I had them standing in line. I had lists of people who wanted into the classes, because being a writer myself, I understood where they were at. And an Admetos person has that ability to understand it on that level. And that's where you can bring out the best in that person, in that class. And typically in my classes at both universities, I would have 10% of the people coming straight out of that 12-week class and publish. That might have been an article, wasn't necessarily a book, or it was a poem that they had created, and they sold it to a place that bought poetry. And then I had another 40% of them continue on with whatever they were writing And many of them over a year or two's time got published in something much better. And a couple of them even went and sold books, but that was 3 or 4 years afterwards. So writing is a wonderful way, and writing poetry is fabulous for an Admetos person. Okay, so going to the end of the spectrum, in the light side, the highest level of a positive Admetos who's worked on his or her inner wounds and done a lot of work on them is the magician who can think it and it will be so. And they will bring it into physical reality and manifestation. They are super creative. They are literally birthing incubators of ideas. They are the Johnny Appleseeds of our world. They sow their ideas to humanity. They are always pregnant with brain children, or what we would refer to as fertile myrtles. And that goes for both a woman Admetos person as well as a male Admetos person who has all sorts of children, but she or he will have a number of miscarriages or abortions too. It's usually the woman that has the miscarriages, not the male. Admetos women are not necessarily brood mares with a flock of children surrounding them. They may choose to use their fertility and turn it into a brainchild or into some other creative means via arts or the healing area. Women who do not desire to have children, or women who are sterile due to genetics or medical complications, they turn their nurturing abilities to family, friends, and the world around them. And natural abortion, unfortunately, the Uranian planet of abortions, whether natural or the woman has chosen to have an abortion, or miscarriages, is solely Admetos. Admetos is the abortions and the miscarriages. Okay, Admetos sleep, a person, a sleep type. An Admetos person who is spiritually asleep, and so we're talking on this measuring ruler, this half of the dark side, okay, may instead appear as a born again or be of a particular fanatical end of a religion that they follow blindly. They are super conservative and conventional. They don't like to rock the boat. They want things the way they, quote unquote, used to be. They don't like change. They're very fixed and rutted, like Taurus. They see their way of life as the only answer to everyone else. In other words, they project a whole hell of a lot on everybody else with their own stuff. Think of people who are steel workers, blue collar, auto workers, small town, hardworking, enduring. They can be counted upon. Family, God, and country. They can be super patriots or fanatics. And on the heavy energy expression end of Admetos, these people can become fanatics and act out by shooting others, joining the Taliban, or joining other fanatical and dangerous organizations. Militias, domestic militias, same thing. Secret societies, paranoia is high. They trust no one but themselves. Their mindset deteriorates into someone is out there to get me. And usually it's the federal government. Be it a person, a group, or government entity. They have the Jim Jones mentality at its worst expression. And of course, if you remember Jim Jones, he was a cult leader, and he had all of his 400 plus people, including children, drink the Kool-Aid, and it poisoned and killed them in South America. I think it was Guyana. Cult followers and are also in there. So that's the Admetos asleep person. Now, the Admetos awake type. An awake Admetos person, spiritually speaking, may be reliable, hardworking, conservative, will not be projecting their way of life on anybody else. They may retain their deep religious or philosophical values, convictions, and at this stage of development possess a live and let live attitude toward other people. They develop a very deep level of compassion over a lifetime and frequently serve others in some capacity. That could be like being a helper in a hospital, or working part-time at a hospice, or they work part-time at a charity organization worker. or volunteer to help others, people, animal, environment, who need their support and help. An awakened Admetos is a world changer, either on a large or small scale. They are continually manifesting their dreams and vision for themselves and others. They are highly creative, they're disciplined, they're reliable. They too are fueled by a sense of mission that comes from a deeply religious or a deeply spiritual philosophical belief system of giving service to this world. There is an interest in other cultures and diversities, and may be a curiosity to explore it deeply, as in the ancient cultures. In fact, they are able to connect with the gods and goddesses archetypes of the ancient world and utilize that information here and now, the feat in itself. The past is the present for the Admetos people. Their hunger is to learn other cultures comes naturally. They are like the cosmic dim sum plate. They take a little of each culture, each myth, each philosophy, and weave it into their own unique story. It makes them fascinating, multidimensional people. I've never had an Admetos person like that ever bore me. They're always interesting people. Okay, so here we really get into a specific super creative type of Admetos. They show the earmarks of super creativity and may have more than one hobby. For people standing outside and seeing this multitasking, multidimensional Admetos person, they can't believe how much they know, how much they produce, or have such deep knowledge about so many different topics. When you consider that Admetos is the original Pandora's box, which is what I call her, a treasure chest that contains all their past life knowledge, and that it becomes available in a very concrete way to an Admetos person, they appear to be very different from everybody else. In reality, Admetos people working at this level of interface with the cosmos are role models, and they show others that they too can do this too. They are not unique. They merely show the way to what is possible for every other human being. They are no more or less talented than anyone else, and that's the truth. The only difference is that they're tuned in and hooked up and use it is all, while most use very little. And this goes back to not trusting yourself and what you know and what you really want to do with your life and with yourself. How do you really want to, in a creative sense, express yourself and affect the world? One person can affect the world. We've seen this time and again. And Admetos people are usually at the head of something like that, or they're very close to it. They're good role models for all of us.